G'day mate, how you going? It's been a while.
Well, it's good to be back, but before we jump in, are you sure that you're actually filming? Because you seem to have trouble with that sometimes.
Just checking, red light on the audio, red light on the video, I'm good to go. Yeah, it's funny, I actually spent 2 hours recording the Sony video and I forgot to push record on the audio, so bit of a nightmare.
It's the worst feeling when you think you've finished something and then you realize you actually didn't do anything. You have to do it all again.
100%. So why has it been so long? Why haven't we had a chat recently? Your health, how are you feeling?
Well, I'm definitely feeling much better now. I've been
Oh,
going
good.
through a little bit of stuff. I was very good, then it all started to flare up again. I had to take some more medication, do some more
hmm
tests. So it seems to be going on a good upwards trajectory again, but it's just hard sometimes when your body kind of lets you down a little bit.
Yeah, that's right. And yeah, I'm in a very similar boat. Obviously, most people are aware my wife's been in hospital twice now. Devote all my time to that. And so I've put YouTube on the back burner a bit, but thankfully she's home and she's comfortable and she's doing a little bit better. So thanks to everyone who sent me messages. Very much appreciated. So we're here and why don't we chat about what we've been up to the last couple of weeks? We've obviously been very busy with Sony's A7R6 and 100-400. Why don't we just share with people what that process looks like? Like, how does it come about? What do we do? How much work does it take? And what the experience is like. So maybe you could share how it was for you.
Well, I always find these reviews really exciting because it's
hmm
something new and it forces me to go out and create something in a certain time frame. Like
Yep.
normally you get a call or an email with someone saying, do you want to jump on a call next week? Here's an NDA. Maybe
hmm
we can discuss something new. And then usually they tell you something and it'd be like, it's going to be in the mail tomorrow and you have a certain amount of time. With the
Yep.
Sony gear, we actually often have a decent amount of time, whereas with other gear it can sometimes just be a few days. So it's really on you to try to create something really cool in a very short period of time.
I can see the photo in the background. You obviously had a lot of fun. You took so many incredible images with the camera and the lens. What was your overall feeling after going through the photos and editing them? What do you make of it?
Well, I was really happy and excited about the camera and the lens. I think it all worked really well together, and especially when I took it to the beach to one of my favorite spots. I had this crazy session with lots of kites and eagles. So that was
Mm.
really impressive and just something that I really enjoyed, and also where the camera performed really well. And one of the things that stood out to me was definitely the battery life. I know it has
Yeah.
new batteries, so that's kind of annoying for everyone who has the old batteries, but at the
hmm
same time, it felt like the battery just lasted forever.
Oh, it's incredible. Yeah.
And then also just the camera, how it performed overall was very good. And I really enjoyed the EVF, which in my opinion is probably the best one Sony has made to date.
Thankfully, we both signed an NDA, but we were both in the same meeting, so we were actually able to chat with one another, which was awesome. The very first thing we said to each other was, this EVF is amazing, and it makes a huge difference. Like the R1 is the benchmark, it's probably the best I've ever used, but now
Yeah.
this one here, it's similar to how a DSLR acts. You look through it, it looks lifelike, the color's great, there's no lag. It just changes how you shoot, doesn't it? It just increases the enjoyability of shooting. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, definitely. Also because they have a bigger magnification. So it feels like you're watching a really huge screen, almost like
hmm
bigger than real life, kind of like you're in a 3D IMAX kind of cinema. Whereas on some of the kind of more lower end cameras, you have quite sort of smaller, more computer screen like kind of looking EVFs that are still okay to work with, but it definitely doesn't feel like real life like these kind of EVFs do.
And as you touched on, we only get a limited time frame to actually test these cameras, and it can be difficult to get everything right because I made a few errors in my video that I did. So I just want to be open and honest. First one is I said the price of the 100-400 was 3,990 US. That's the price that Sony Australia gave us. Sony US had a slightly different idea, and I think it's 4,298. So my bad on that. And the problem with YouTube is you can't change it once you upload it. Once it's there, it's there. The other thing that I said was new was the buffer indicator, but plenty of people told me it's been on Sony for ages, and that's fantastic. Perhaps it could have been there by default. And the other thing I got told I got wrong was the readout speed. So I guessed that the readout speed was around 13.5 milliseconds, very similar to the R6 III, but a lot of people said, no, that's wrong. It's 20 milliseconds. And I think you got this as well, didn't you? But that wasn't our experience in the field.
My feeling in the field was definitely that the readout speed was much faster than 20 milliseconds. I'm very allergic to the image wobbles you get with slow readout sensors and the distorted wings, and I wasn't really getting either. My suspicion is that because we're both using compressed RAW, we might also be getting a faster readout speed in the 12-bit compressed RAW mode compared to the full RAW mode that a lot of other people have been using. To me, the only real usable RAW mode, even though we're giving up a little bit of image quality, is probably compressed RAW on that camera because we have better autofocus, better buffer, and potentially also less rolling shutter.
I like to think that you and I, when we review this gear, we actually go out into the field and we try to use it on real world examples. And specs are important, but they only tell part of the story. It's not until you actually use something that you really get a feel for how good it is. And our in-field experience with that camera was it's fine for wildlife, like it's fine for the majority of shooting. It might not be all right for hummingbirds, but you could possibly use the mechanical shutter for that. But look at your images, like you shot more action than I did, and you weren't really seeing massive warping of the wings, were you?
No, like I've seen a lot more on other cameras, so I'm actually quite confused by my findings still, but that's just how it turned out in the field. The dove wings were relatively like on the horizontal, whereas with other cameras sometimes they like bend up like crazy, and that just wasn't happening at all. So it's definitely still a little bit curious to me why we didn't see much or any of that rolling shutter.
It's all very interesting. And then the last thing I just want to fact check myself on is at the time that we shot, we only had access to JPEGs and we couldn't access the raw files. And I think both of us mentioned that at ISO 3200 and above, we saw a little bit of muddling in the JPEGs that we got. We now have access to the raw files, and I'll just put a side-by-side on the screen. It appears that Sony do some sort of noise reduction to their JPEGs at high ISO, even though we had noise reduction turned off. So that kind of surprised me, and it explains a little bit why I was getting a little bit frustrated with the high ISO. I don't think it's as bad as I suspected at first, and with, you can see in this raw file, there's still noise there, but it has the sharpness that we were worried about. Is that what you found?
Now, a camera like this is probably never going to be a low light monster or the camera you would prefer to use in low light. But at the same time, I think 6400 with a good editing workflow will still be very usable. And 12800, I think if the conditions are right, will also still be usable. So high ISO is not a major concern.
That's probably going to lead me on to the next thing I think we should talk about is the lens. So it's the 100-400 4.5. And it's quite interesting to look at the comments that I received, and I think you've got a few as well. If I review the 200-800 f9, people will say it's too slow, it's too big, the image quality isn't good, I want a faster lens. You do a review of the 100-500 7.1 and they say it's not fast enough, and then you do a lens which is fast like the 100-400 and they say that's too expensive, it's too big, I want such and such. It's like, I'm not sure, are people wanting the perfect lens? Have you seen this? Why do you think we're getting so many of these comments of people critiquing every lens we seem to review?
Well, I think first of all, it's a natural reaction. If you already have a bunch of lenses, it's nicer for you and your wallet if you don't want a new lens. So I think there's naturally a bit of an aversion towards a new lens. But I also think we have to make the differentiation between, are you looking for one lens that can do it all? Because there's really not a lot of them on the market. Or are you looking for a specific lens that can fulfill a specific task? And I think that's what most pros do, including me. And that's what I was personally very excited about this lens, because I could see it, a very fast zoom lens that's actually not crazy expensive. It is expensive, but if you compare it to the Canon 100-300, that costs more than double than what this lens costs. And so I think this lens can actually be quite an attractive option. For instance, for shooting action in some more low light situations, like what I do with the cockatoos or at the beach. It was perfect here at the beach. I could shoot this as well, of course, with a 2.8 300mm prime lens as well. But first of all, that's more expensive. And then you have a real advantage of something being a zoom lens, because especially for birds in flight, I can zoom out first, find my subject lightning fast, zoom back in, frame it, and then shoot. Like if you've used a long prime lens, you know that it can sometimes be very hard to find your subject at like 600 or 800mm. Whereas if I can go out to like 200 or 300mm, find it, go back to like 600 or 700mm, it makes shooting much easier. And it also just lets you zoom out a little bit if you have to, or suddenly an eagle comes in and you were set up for like a turn. with a zoom, you can still zoom out. Otherwise, with a prime lens, you're just getting like the feet.
Yeah, well, I agree. And it's another one of those things when you look at the specs and then you use it, because as soon as you pick up that lens, it's extremely well balanced. The autofocus is extremely sharp. You're getting a G Master lens. And for me, I think it just fills that niche. And the analogy I would use is if you play golf, you don't just have one club, you have multiple clubs because they all serve different purposes. And obviously with photography, that's why we have different lenses. Different lenses allow you to shoot in different things. I think the problem is that not everybody can afford multiple lenses. And so often they are looking for the one lens. Like when I started, I couldn't afford multiple lenses. So I shot with that, the 400 5.6 for years without any other lens. That was the only lens I had for mainly birding. And then I got the 500 and I just used that. And it wasn't until much later that I got a zoom, and now I'm fortunate to have multiple. So it is interesting, and I guess people just need to be aware that one lens doesn't suit everybody. I think we would all like a lens that suits us perfectly, but ultimately these companies are just making lenses to sell to the majority or whatever it is. And with Sony, you also have to remember their product lineup, because they have the 100-400 and they also have the 400-800. Well, you share what you think about that Sony lineup now.
Well, it's definitely one that I could see working well. And just to finish off on 100-400, I think the biggest downfall is that it's actually called 100-400, because when we think about 100-400, we always think small, light, and cheap. And this lens is not that small, not that cheap, not that light. But at the same time, it serves a very specific purpose. But because it has the same focal range than a lot of the other lenses, it seems more expensive in comparison. But where I thought this could work really well and gets you a very capable combo that's not crazy expensive, at least not as expensive as a big prime lens, would be the 100-400 with the 400-800 combined. And if you then add a 1.4 teleconverter to that, that gets you from 100 to 1120 millimeters for under 7,500 US dollars. And then you have the 100-400 where it shines. Low light, wide, zooming out, because this is our biggest beef with the 200-600 and the 400-800. We don't have those 100 millimeters. And if you remember back when we were in Phillip Island shooting the geese with the babies, I had the 100-500, you had the 200-600. And the shots we got couldn't be any more different. Sometimes you think the difference between 100 and 200 isn't that big, but if you actually need to zoom out, it's like dramatic. So having the 100-400 to cover the wide end, the low light, the action, and then having the 400-800 to cover the long end, even with the teleconverter potentially, I think that's a very capable setup, and maybe the most complete setup you can currently get from any brand.
Yeah, no, it is interesting, and it's just great that different brands are doing that. Let's talk about Canon for a second. What do you think Canon's missing at the moment in terms of their wildlife lens lineup? Like, what would you like to see? Have you got any reason why we aren't seeing lots of new wildlife lenses from Canon?
I would definitely love to see some innovation from Canon. I feel like for wildlife in particular, they have been fairly quiet on the RF mount. They made the 100-500, which was a stroke of genius. Same size as 100-400, extra 100 millimeters, amazing lens, like a must-have lens. Then they also made the 100-300 2.8, which is a great lens, but it's obviously quite pricey. And other than that, they've really only released the 200-800 millimeter lens. But one could argue that the 100-500 and the 200-800 are very similar lenses that almost perform the same purpose, just at a similar price point. It's not like a 100-400 and a 400-800 that really complement each other. It feels like both of these kind of cover a very similar range, and then one's a little bit longer than the other. So I feel like something in the middle would be amazing, like a 200-500, 300-600, something like that, that costs probably, well, realistically between 4,000 and 6,000 US dollars probably. But they could cover what Nikon has been doing with their 400 4.5, their 600 PF, the 800 PF. Sony now is done with the 400-800, 200-600, and also the 100-400. And so I feel like Canon used to be kind of on par with the others, but now if you rank them by lenses, I think we'd probably still give a slight edge to Nikon. But Sony has really caught up with making some very interesting sort of mid-level glass for wildlife photographers. And then Canon has done something, but there isn't really that one lens where you can say I have the 100-500 and then I have like a 400-800, 300-600, whatever, where it's a clear kind of 1-2 punch. For me, it's clear I have the 100-500 and the f4 600 prime. That still works well. But then we're talking like tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And it'll be interesting to say there's been plenty of rumors about this 300 to 600 for some time. We just don't know how fast it's going to be and what quality it's going to be, etc. So it's interesting that I agree that Nikon are definitely doing extremely well in terms of lenses. But then we look at Nikon and we think, what's happening with their cameras? Like, we haven't seen a Z9 II for what is it, 4 years now, maybe longer, since the Z9 was released. So have you got any inside info on what Nikon are doing? Is a new camera coming anytime soon?
Definitely haven't heard anything there. It's been very quiet in general. They made that announcement recently of the 120 to 300 f2.8 TC lens. I think that should be very interesting.
Yeah,
it's very likely not going to be cheap either.
No.
And beyond that, we haven't really heard that much. I think the cameras overall are great. Like, there's nothing wrong with the Z8 or Z9, but I feel like especially you and I that have shot so many other cameras that shoot at 30, 40, 60, 120 frames per second. If you only have 20 frames per second, no raw pre-capture, then it does feel like a step back sometimes. So I think if you have one now, there's definitely nothing wrong. But I feel like the step from having a lot of these things back to not having it, that's something I've found a little bit difficult in the field, especially with pre-capture. And I think we've talked about this in the past. If you're used to pre-capture, you can train yourself to basically never miss a moment. You set it to a certain time, and by the time you press the shutter button, you know you've nailed the shot that you actually see in your viewfinder. If you now jump back to a camera that has maybe 10 or 20 frames per second and no pre-capture, what often happens is you're seeing a scene, you thought you took the photo, and the photo isn't there.
Yeah.
And I don't like that.
No, well, we've both experienced that a few times. And the other added bonus is sometimes you'll get shots you didn't know you took. And that's always like, oh, wow, I didn't even know I captured this. This is amazing. So that's always a massive bonus as well.
But wait, isn't that cheating?
Ultimately, I think for me, like, that's a fair question. Like, these cameras now, you might say, well, is that even photography? Can you even call it that now? I see where people are coming from, but for me, I'm still creating the composition. I'm still getting into the right place at the right time. I'm still anticipating the action happening. I'm still hitting the shutter. Ultimately, we're just getting more photos to choose from, I think. So you're just increasing your odds of capturing what you want. Like, you could have captured this before, but it just would have taken you much longer. So, you know, people can debate. Let us know in the comments what you think about these new cameras. But for me, it's a technology. It's here, and I'll make the use of it while we can to get some really cool images.
Yeah, definitely. And for me, I feel like if I see a shot but the camera fails to capture it, then it's kind of the camera letting me down. Whereas now I'm in a lot more situations where I feel like the camera is a tool. I can rely on it, and then I can fully concentrate on getting the action, keeping it in the viewfinder. Because, for instance, for action photography, look at the image that I took of the Regent Honeyeater in flight. You still have to get that tiny, really fast thing in your viewfinder. And if I can manage to get it in my viewfinder, I'm over the moon if my camera focuses on it and gives me a photo. Nothing worse than actually getting it. You focus on it, it goes onto the background, and you miss the shot. So I just love the new technology, because especially for action photography, yes, it has made it easier. I can go to this beach and I have kites coming down and I basically nail every single shot. But that's not something I get upset about. I might have to look through more images in the end. But if I can get a lot of keepers from one morning session, I'm over the moon.
Obviously, you've been into rainforests to desert. I've got a question from member Gaz that wants to know what your scariest experience in Australia is. Have you had any scary experiences throughout all your years?
I don't know. I'm probably usually more scared of random people than like animals. I think if you walk through Australia, you will encounter the odd snake here and there, but except for one snake that was in the middle of the road and I tried to chase it off and then it kind of started to chase after me a little bit. I normally only had snakes that would just wiggle away. Even when I almost stepped on them, I've definitely been within like less than a foot of really big snakes, but normally they either just lie there and you can retreat, or they kind of wiggle away. So I haven't found snakes to be too bad, but I've definitely had some unfortunate experiences with people, with like someone tried to cut open the front of my four-wheel drive to steal the winch. And sometimes at night you're in some strange areas and you just hear like screaming and squealing tires and you're like, what's going on here, you know? Or although if you ask my daughter, she definitely had a scary experience. We were at that beach where all the cassowaries were, and there's nothing happening this morning. She's kind of tired and upset. So someone gifted her a banana to cheer her up. And then out of nowhere, like 5 seconds later, this cassowary comes running out of the forest onto the middle of the beach, chasing after her, trying to get the banana. And of course, at first, no one really knew what was going on. She was screaming. The cassowary were just there kind of trying to intimidate her, wanting her to drop the banana. And then I realized I like slapped it out of her hand and then it just grabbed it and walked away. But that was definitely probably one of the scarier experiences. Also just because the cassowaries, they are very big birds and you definitely hear some crazy stories about them. There, I don't think there was any real danger because they're very used to people. They're just trying to intimidate you to get the food, which is kind of a bad thing because it shows you how much they're kind of habituated in that spot already. Yeah, like I don't think I've ever felt that scared of wildlife. Have you?
A couple of times. I've had a few experiences with snakes. Nothing dangerous. It's just more not realizing they're there and almost standing on them. And sometimes I've been walking through and I thought, well, that's weird to have a bike tire in the middle of the bush, and then it starts moving and you go, that's not a bike tire, that's a snake. I think the other thing is I was a little bit foolish once with crocodiles where I took unnecessary risks. So you've been to Fog Dam, haven't you? So it's an amazing place in the Northern Territory. If you do visit, you need to go there because the bird life there is amazing. But there are crocodiles there, and there's the jacanas that are walking on the lily pads. And what do I tell everybody to do to get good shots?
Go low, get in the water.
Go low. So not a good idea if there's crocodiles about. I definitely didn't get in the water, but I definitely got down low to get that shot. And in hindsight, I shouldn't have done that. The most fear I've ever had is actually around water. There was a river and there was a bank, like a sandbank, and all the birds were on the sandbank, and it looked shallow. And so I've got my gear and I'm walking in, and then I just start sinking, and I get to a point where the water's here and I'm holding the lens above my head and I'm going, uh-oh, what do I do here? I should have turned back, but I just kept going, and thankfully it didn't get any deeper, but and I got some really good shots. But that was probably a little bit silly. So I think it's important just for everybody that, just be very careful around water. When you go into some areas like the Mallee, you can get lost pretty quickly. It gets very common. I know a lot of people have GPS, but
that happened to me.
Oh, did it?
That happened to me actually. Lucky it was sort of in between paths. Like it was a cloudy day, so I couldn't see the sun at all. So you're walking into the Mallee and you think you're walking straight. I was looking for these grasslands. I was walking. I'm like, okay, nothing here. I walked maybe 20 minutes. I'm like, oh, I'll just go back. And I thought I was going back the same way that I was coming from.
Yep.
And then about 25 minutes later, I'm like, this feels kind of long. And I suddenly came out on this road a kilometer west of me that was probably 2.5 kilometers from where I parked.
Yeah.
And I had just not realized that I was walking in a completely different direction because you can actually lose track. And sometimes you can't see your old footprints or you've walked in a circle and you don't think it looks the same, but it does look the same. So I'm definitely always careful in the Mallee. And that time I also didn't have my phone with me, so it was even worse because normally if you download even some offline maps, you can still kind of see roughly where you are. Whereas there, I just foolishly left my phone in the car as well and just started walking. And definitely getting lost out there can be quite scary, and also breaking down in your car isn't fun somewhere in the outback either.
Yeah, the tip I got told is if you've got an Apple, you can just put an AirTag in your car, have your phone with you, and if you get lost, you can just look up your AirTag and you can walk directly back to the car. So that's not a bad idea if you do shoot Apple. But let us know in the comments what your scariest encounter is whilst you're shooting wildlife, and just take those precautions because nobody wants any harm to come to anybody when they're out doing what they love, that's for sure. So I got a question recently that I get all the time, and I'm sure you get it as well, is Mark said, if you had 2 weeks in Australia, where would you go to photograph birds? And surprisingly, that's a very difficult question to answer. Why is it difficult?
I would say it's an impossible question to answer because there's no photography infrastructure in Australia. There might be O'Reilly's Rainforest Retreat near Brisbane. That's probably one of the go-to spots that I would recommend for most. There's a couple spots around Cairns where you can see the rifle birds, but overall, it's nothing like the South American lodges, for instance. And it's just because there isn't a lot of obvious spots to go to. there's good wildlife in Australia, but I would say on average, it's kind of hard to access and it's very spread out. And it's also a whole continent. There isn't like 4 or 5 spots where you go, yes, this is definitely what I want to do or where I want to take people. And I've been thinking about doing workshops for a while. It's probably something I want to do in the future, but it's also very hard to get these spots together. A lot of spots are like people's backyards. It's like private property, something you'd worked on for years to get access to. But just coming here as a tourist and just going to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 places, staying there and photographing awesome birds, it's actually very difficult.
But if I was put on the spot to say, where would you go? I would say O'Reilly's Rainforest in Queensland outside of Brisbane. Cairns is very good for variety. Fog Dam and Darwin is also very good for variety of birds. Around Sydney, the Blue Mountains is nice. It's hard work, but it's beautiful to see. The south coast of New South Wales, where I was, there's some nice shorebirds. If you come down to Victoria, you've got the Western Treatment Plant, which has got a lot of different birds. Phillip Island's not too bad. And then if you go to sort of South Australia, you've got Glue Pot that we've both been to, some nice mallee birds. And in WA, you've got, where would you go in WA if you went there?
I think WA, what you would have to do a road trip from Perth around the sort of southwest corner and then back up to Perth. That's definitely an amazing area and probably the most maybe exciting or complete area in Australia, but it's also the one that has a lot of different birds. It's almost like its own total limited habitat with lots of endemic species, lots of endemic plants. So the most popular things would definitely be along the East Coast. But even what you mentioned there, it was like 2,000-3,000 kilometers between all the different spots that you mentioned. So it's definitely not an easy feat, but maybe in the future we can get something going.
Yeah, and I didn't even mention there's another whole island to the south of Australia called Tasmania, and they've got their own endemics, and you could spend a couple of weeks just there. If you do come down here, just be, I guess, realistic about how many birds you're going to see, and maybe just pick a couple of spots that you go to and spend some time there. You will see lots of wildlife. It's just you might not see the variety you were hoping for because you just got to travel such long distances.
And I think it's also, I experience the same because I'm going to South America next year and I'm like, I want to see this macaw and this parrot and this, and then it's all spread out over the whole continent. That's the same thing that happens to people here. They say they want to see a Major Mitchell's cockatoo, they want to see a Golden finch, and they want to see a few parrots. And now you're already spread out completely over all of Australia. So to see Golden finches, you probably have to go to like the Wyndham area in the Kimberleys, in like northwestern Western Australia. To see Major Mitchell cockatoos, no one really knows where they are. Like that's probably one of the hardest birds because they're highly nomadic. Sometimes you will see thousands, then you go to the same spot, you don't see one. Very hard bird to track down. Like if someone said to you, can you take me to Major Mitchell's cockatoo? You probably say, probably not. Yeah. And then there's just other birds that are a bit more approachable, like the ones at O'Reilly's, for instance.
For sure. But definitely come to visit. Australia is a great place to visit, and there's plenty to see and do here, that's for sure. So one last question I thought we might ask, and we could have answered it in the beginning, but let's just say, for example, that Sony video that we did, how long did you spend doing that? When you think about how many hours you spend in the field, how many hours scripting, how many hours filming, editing, like just how much time do you put into creating a YouTube video such as that?
Probably a week in the field with the camera, shooting more or less every day. Then going through the images, editing some of the images, probably another day or two, scripting probably a day, and then filming roughly a few hours, but you're not going to do much else that day, and then probably a day or two editing. So overall, you're probably at least 8 to 10 days of like full work involved in this. And it's really exciting because I love the challenge of being forced to create something in that short period of time. And I see it as a great challenge to really try to get photos that most other people may be not able to get in that sort of short period of time and really show what the gear is capable of. So I love doing it, but it's definitely also a lot of work. And I think in general, for both of us, it kind of never stops, but that's why it's important that we love doing YouTube and love doing bird photography, because then that's what keeps us going. Like in reality, it's probably always on my mind. Even if I try to relax, I'm like, oh, that was a good video idea. Let's just quickly write that down.
Yeah, and you just touched on something there that maybe people would help us with. What are some video ideas? Let us know in the comments, like, what would you want to see a video on? What would you create a video on? Because it is part of the challenge, is it's the never-ending cycle of YouTube. Is just you got to create content, and coming up with new ideas is part of the fun, and it can be challenging. And yeah, I don't spend quite as much time as you. You're obviously extremely dedicated, but I did get out a few times with the lens, and you're right, it's fun to challenge yourself. Like, you are under the pump a little bit to try and get all the different shots, all the B-roll and comparisons, and put the drone up, and I've got to do that, and I've got to do that, and putting it all together. But I think if you look back at the catalogs we have, I'm quite proud of all the work that we've done, and hopefully people find it very helpful and useful, that it's there for everybody if they're interested and they feel like we're friends, and we are friends. And obviously you can rely on us to be honest and share our findings and do that. And I love chatting with you, and we get to talk all about our favorite hobby, and people get to listen. So if you've come this far, thank you very much. We appreciate the support. The next video will be on Jan's channel. And any last words, Jan?
Yes, if you can also give us some good clickbait titles with those video ideas in the comments, that would be great.
Awesome. All right, mate. Well, lots of fun. We'll see you next time. See ya.
See you soon. Bye.